violent.
You know, you're exactly right, Leland. You just heard from Elder there saying, you know, it's legally illegal kind of situation. And that is exactly what we're hearing from a lot of them when I ask them, do you consider what you're doing to be legal or illegal? And a lot of them say, well, we were called to do this. And they're very aware of what they're doing. One Venezuelan family even said, so can we cross the river and just put our hands up and self-surrender? Because that's what we see very often with our Border Patrol units. And then today, we've been seeing numerous confrontations between the National Guard and this migrant caravan as well. And there's a protection claim over them. Now that lasts for 20 days. So they have about 6 more days under that claim, but you just saw the National Guard's confrontation. So a lot of people are saying, how did they allow them to kind of transit so far, 100 miles at this point, just to come in and apprehend them? Well, to be clear here, Leland, number one, they have not only are they transiting illegally with no documentation going through checkpoints, but they do have that protection claim, but they've been getting onto vehicles, getting onto flatbed trailers, getting rides to their next destination, transiting a couple of miles. Now that is illegal. That was a law that was put into place after the 2019 caravan because it encouraged smuggling and human trafficking.
Yeah, Ali, I'm hearing sort of what's happening in Mexico. I'm wondering, as you're talking to these people, why have they become so much more emboldened, going from we need help, we're desperate, to fighting and demanding and feeling entitled that they're going to come no matter what?
Well, honestly, Leland, I think that at this point, we've got 60 people that are sick. At least 40 of them are kids. A woman gave birth. So we have a lot going on here, and the tensions continue to rise. The longer they're out there, every time I walk by one of them, they say, tengo hambre. That means I'm hungry. I need food. So they don't have a lot of things. And they, at this point, it's kind of like, you know what? Let's just go for it. And that's what we saw today. They just went for it. And we did see some of the migrants helping out some of the injured National Guard members because they didn't want violence and they didn't want to create problems. But that is the reality of the situation right now. Now, I can tell you more than 120 people were detained today by Customs and Border Protection. And it's kind of a strategy. They wear them out. They tire them out because going in and apprehending people in a caravan of, tired people.
Yeah, we saw the violence down there and just how difficult it is, and difficult for you and your crew. Ali, we always appreciate it. Great reporting. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Leland. Thank you.
Border crossings tend to create charged political conversations.
Anastasia Bolton with the KENS 5 border team spent hours on a ranch in Dimmitt County, not far from the border. The owner shared stories about people who cross her property.
20 or so miles from the U.S.-Mexico border.
It's rough out here.
Life is beautiful.
Or you have to choose it.
And complicated.
This isn't for sissies.
Much more so than Lynn would like.
Our little piece of this great big world that we live in has been invaded. It prevents us from living the lifestyle that we want to. Our health, our safety, our security are at risk at any given point in time by an unknown person or persons. I call it an invasion.
Migrants, Lynn says, are crossing the border and then her property.
I have no control over all this that's happening and the impact it has and the choices I'm having to make.
Like the choice Lynn feels she had to make to leave her job.
The anger is, there's no control. I can't fix this. How do I judge the difference between an individual that approaches me that is looking just for a better life versus an individual who's got harm intended? How do I judge that? How do I know the difference?
In Dimmitt County with Jose Sanchez, I'm Anastasia Bolton.
This is just the beginning of our conversation with the ranch owner. Tonight at 10, she'll share surveillance video and stories of her interactions with migrants, what they ask or sometimes demand. We also talk to her teen kids about their experiences. All that tonight on KENS 5 Eyewitness News at 10.
People living on Texas ranches near the border are tired of talking about the migrant traffic coming through their properties. That's because they feel no one is listening.
But one rancher did open up to KENS 5 to show us what's going on. She gave Eyewitness News reporter Anastasia Bolton a look inside her ranch.
As far as backyards go,
It's very quiet.
this one is exactly what Lynn wanted for her kids.
It's very peaceful out here.
She lives about 24 miles from the Texas-Mexico border in Dimmitt County.
There's this sense of just, you're in God's country, like peace.
Lynn's teenagers, John and Emma, they love it too.
No babies.
We do the livestock
Easy, baby.
for a number of reasons.
Be nice.
They provide life lessons
It's like having your own best friend that doesn't talk as much.
that will stick with my children.
Come here.
You know, my daughter's got huge ambitions. She's building that now. She can't afford to lose some of these cattle. Well, I'm going to head to the barn first.
Life on this ranch is also providing Lynn's kids the kinds of lessons she wished they had to learn much later in life, if at all.
Because I need to check some of the cameras that we have out here.
Cameras help Lynn keep track of those family investments.
We've had multiple times where we've come out and there's animals in improper locations or they're out.
Lynn says cameras also show who comes and goes through her backyard.
So it was functioning, but it was turned off.
She often finds them turned off, broken, or taken. Lynn tells us she doesn't have that many left.
Clearly, somebody who doesn't want to be photographed, videoed, or known to be someplace they don't belong.
Lynn tells us there is a steady stream of people who don't belong on her property.
We're being invaded. Our property, our home, our backyard is being invaded by trespassers.
Over the years, Lynn's security cameras recorded suspected migrants on her land, loading up in cars on their way somewhere else in the United States, or being detained by Border Patrol.
No, dude, he's gonna see us.
Her teenage kids got cell phone video of a man Lynn says is a migrant asking for a ride. Lynn also tells us people have demanded help.
How do I judge the difference between an individual that approaches me that is looking just for a better life versus an individual who's got harm intended? How do I judge that? And I guess that's where I come back to the whole blanket, irregardless. Either side of that equation, you don't belong here. Maybe that's harsh, but it's my reality.
Lynn says she feels so unsafe. She doesn't want us to use her last name. She also asked us not to show her kids or use their real names.
You never know when, how, who, what their intentions are. It's not like there's a consistent schedule. So yeah, it's being vigilant 24/7, and it's exhausting.
The teenagers are tired too.
I walked out to the barn in the morning and been confronted by one with 5 other buddies hanging out in the brush wanting water and a ride. And out there by yourself, it can get a little scary even with a dog.
For the people that watch this, don't try and see it from your eyes, try and see it from our eyes. And try and put yourself in that situation.
This is a thoroughfare. This is where they're moved from one property to another. They move and open up areas so they have better accessibility. And I'm going to use the wire that's on here if it'll hold. And I will tighten it on the fence.
Lynn says she noticed more people on her property in the last year.
To realize that there's eyes potentially out there watching you that you don't see. It's kind of creepy.
What happens in her backyard, Lynn believes, depends on the people tens of thousands of miles away in the White House.
Not only do our borders need to be closed until current conditions can be handled, that plan probably incorporates a wall, a border security of some sort.
Lynn admits she doesn't have all the answers, but says people who should have them aren't coming up with any that work for her family.
We find ways to adapt to the conditions and the problems and do the best we can. That's all we got.
In Dimmitt County with Jose Sanchez, I'm Anastasia Bolton.
Lynn tells us she's had to quit her job so she could be at home for the kids and the animals. She says she doesn't feel safe leaving them alone on the property.
Right now on Operation Lone Star, the Texas Military Department announced border wall construction is moving along. President Joe Biden pledged to stop border wall construction, so Governor Greg Abbott is building his own. In a weekly brief about Operation Lone Star, the state's immigration control effort, the Texas Department of Public Safety reported state and federal authorities are watching the latest caravan of migrants moving through Mexico.
We don't know if they're going to make it this far, but in preparation, we are taking proactive measures and deploying assets based on any potential threats or caravans that will make their way to the southern border.
Human rights activists are critical of President Biden's continued use of Title 42 to expel migrants. It's a policy started by former President Trump and allows border agents to remove migrants because of the ongoing pandemic.
Here we go. The state of Texas taking matters into its own hands by building a border wall in a different way, using some unusual materials.
We begin dropping these large containers that you see on 18-wheelers that you also see on these ships that are going across the ocean. We're dropping them down on locations that could be crossings that would be used by these caravans to serve as a blockade to prevent them from coming across the border.
Hey, why not? Our next guest served as a sheriff in the Rio Grande Valley for 8 years. Here with us right now to react, former Fort Bend County Sheriff and Texas Representative Troy Nails. Congressman, what do you think right now of that idea?
I think it's a great idea. It's a tool that the governor is using to try to help slow down, curb this invasion that we're seeing at our southern border. And I think the governor's looking at this as kind of like a defensive position. You kind of look at my military training. You want to try to find a way to slow down the surge, and you want to channel these people into areas that we can handle them better, because we have 1,250 miles of border in Texas. It's a lot of area to cover, and we're doing the federal government's job for them because they refuse to do it on their own. So
you're saying it's not political. It absolutely helps to have some type of barrier there, and containers would work.
Right. Yes, absolutely. When you have, these shipping containers, and the American people, these are what you see on the back of 18-wheelers. Some of them are 25, 30 feet long, 8 foot tall. So if these individuals are going to approach one of those barriers, number one, some may attempt to climb over it, but many of them will stop and wait a minute, and then they'll move, alongside that barrier and try to find an opening.
All right.
It's a way to, yeah.
I just don't know. How much do you think the federal government could stop this from happening? After all, they do have to greenlight the wall.
It's the federal government's, this is the problem, Brian, it's the federal government's job, it's Congress's job to secure our nation's borders. And we haven't done it for years, for decades. Congress has not secured the southern border. So now it's incumbent upon governors along the southern states that have borders to augment the Border Patrol with their own resources, Department of Public Safety, the National Guard, and it's costing Texans billions of dollars.
And he doesn't, what drives me nuts is he doesn't seem to care. There's nobody in the administration who seems to care. We do, and you, of course you do. And now this, Republicans in the House today will introduce a bill to block a reported plan by the Biden administration that the president denies, by the way, which is a little bizarre, that they're going to pay illegal immigrants who were separated from their families at the border up to $450,000. You're putting together legislation just in case the president wasn't read into his own policy.
The American people are not going to buy this. They're not buying anything with this administration. Look at what took place in Virginia the other day and across our entire country with elections. But this is the issue. Mayorkas is a fool, and I think he's lied to the American people. Joe Biden is asleep at the wheel, not only here, but when he travels overseas. And Kamala is missing in action. She says she's been down to the border. She stopped in there for a little bit and then took off and went to California. So go ahead. Try to give these illegal immigrants $400,000, whatever number they have. The American people aren't going to buy it. Why don't we address some of the homelessness we have across our country, even here in this city of Washington, D.C.? They're Americans. They're homeless. They're sleeping out there on bridges. What are we doing for them? Nothing.
Nothing.
Zero.
But when it comes to this, I'm wondering how many Democrats you can get involved in this. Henry Cuellar, for one, I can't see being against this.
Well, number one, the idea that we're going to give thousands of dollars, American taxpayers' dollars, to illegal immigrants that are coming across our southern border by the thousands is irresponsible. Right. And the American people aren't going to buy it, Brian. They're going to be against this.
I see the sheriff coming out in you. Congressman, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
We're learning 2 people were killed in a deadly crash following a chase with Border Patrol agents. The driver now facing federal charges. Federal officials say Elton Gastelum tried to avoid a Border Patrol checkpoint on State Road 11 near Deming back in September. When Border Patrol agents began chasing him, Gastelum lost control and the SUV rolled several times. 6 people were ejected. Another 4 were rescued from that burning SUV. One person died on scene, another died at the hospital, both illegal immigrants. Gastelum appeared in federal court today, where a judge ruled he will stay behind bars until trial. He's facing a federal charge of transporting illegal immigrants, resulting in death.
4 migrants were killed in a rollover crash in Culberson County. 11 others in that same vehicle were injured. The smuggler who was driving the 15 migrants into the U.S. has not been caught. The crash happened this morning on State Highway 54 north of Van Horn, just 1 mile north of the Blue Origin space launch site. ABC 7's Rosemary Montañez is here with more details surrounding the crash. Rosemary, what can you tell us?
Stephanie, a total of 16 people were inside that vehicle, 15 migrants and the smuggler who was driving. We learned today that all 15 passengers were from Guatemala. Officials tell us this was a human smuggling operation. All passengers were between the ages of 20 to 25, and they had just been picked up 1 hour before the crash occurred. The Culberson County Sheriff told us that the 911 call came from the surviving passengers. Officials tell us the driver lost control on a curb. Investigators still don't know how fast that SUV was going. The sheriff says the smuggler got into a second vehicle that was also being used to smuggle migrants. That's why the driver has not yet been arrested. 5 of the injured migrants were taken to University Medical Center here in El Paso in critical condition. Now, ABC 7 will continue to follow this story, and as soon as we learn more details on the crash and the condition of those passengers, we will update you. Back to you.
The man accused of killing a man he lived with pleading not guilty to the crime today. You see his picture here. This is Yuri Medina Ulola. He was in court this morning. Along with murder, he's also charged with tampering with evidence. He was arrested last month after being found walking around in Arlington covered in blood, and witnesses told police where they first saw the man and connected him to a home on Lone Star Road, and that's where the victim was found dead. Text messages between the suspect and a witness referred to the victim as the suspect's uncle. Now, police say surveillance video from inside the home shows him stabbing the victim and hitting him with a chair. The police report states when he was arrested, the man gave police a fake name and said he was just 17 years old, but immigration officials confirmed his real identity and his correct age of 24. He is scheduled to appear in court again at the end of the month.
Found covered in blood in East Arlington, pleaded not guilty to murder today. Action News Jax first told you about the story last month. Police said that Yuri Uloa stabbed his roommate to death. Action News Jax Jessica Barreto is taking a closer look at the state's case against him.
Inside the courthouse, Medina Uloa pleaded not guilty to charges related to the death of his 46-year-old roommate. Now the state wants a grand jury to be seated here and decide if he should be indicted. 24-year-old Yeri Noel Medina Uloa appeared in court on Thursday morning with his attorney and a Spanish interpreter, where he pleaded not guilty to second-degree not premeditated murder and tampering with evidence in connection to his roommate's death. According to his arrest report from October 6th, 27th, a witness told police that he received a call and text from Ulloa where he said he, quote, killed Uncle Francisco because the man hit him. Here is video of that scene from last month. It all started when witnesses saw a man covered in blood along Hamard Place off Monument Road and called 911. Police followed a trail of blood that led them to a home on Lone Star Road, where they found the body of 46-year-old Francisco Javier Cuellar. The report says officers recovered surveillance video which shows Ulloa stabbing the victim numerous times. Detectives also recovered a knife with blood on it in the woods. Officers were able to find Ulloa and arrest him. He provided a false name and age, and since he is not a U.S. citizen, immigration officials confirmed his age and name 6 days later, based on his Honduran birth certificate. I called a relative of Cuellar's who also lived in that home, according to the report, and she was surprised to learn Ulloa had pleaded not guilty, but didn't want to offer any comments. Before a trial date can be set, all sides need to gather back here again for a pre-trial hearing and go over the evidence in this case. That hearing is set for November 30th. Reporting in downtown Jacksonville, Jessica Barreto, CBS 47, Fox 30, Action News Jax.
A man accused of murdering another man who he called his uncle pleaded not guilty to the crime today. 24-year-old Yeri Medina Ulloa appeared in court this morning. Investigators say that he used a fake name, posing as a 17-year-old, and had been in the country illegally. News 4 Jax reporter Corley Peel joining us live from the Duval County Courthouse, and the jail, I should say, to show us how the governor's office is getting involved here. Corley, this sounds unusual.
Well, right now, Ulloa is an immigration hold here at the jail. And when we were notified about his hearing today, we actually were notified from Governor Ron DeSantis' office, which is unusual because they don't typically reach out to us about murder cases. And I asked this administration why they reached out to us about this specific case. And they say it's because they have concerns about illegal immigration in Jacksonville and throughout the state. In front of a judge, Ulloa pleads not guilty to the stabbing death of a man last month. According to his arrest report, witnesses found Ulloa covered in blood in an Arlington neighborhood on October 7th. The report shows Ulloa told a witness he killed Uncle Francisco because he hit him. Once police took Ulloa into custody, they learned he gave them a fake name and told them he was 17. ICE investigators then determined Ulloa is actually 24 from Honduras and was in the country illegally. Governor DeSantis mentioned in a news conference on Thursday that Ulloa flew on an illegal flight to Jacksonville.
These are middle-of-the-night flights, no notification to the state or anybody, and this is not the way you keep people safe. It's reckless and it's wrong.
I spoke with DeSantis' senior policy advisor, Larry Keefe, who confirmed that he, in fact, came here on one of these flights.
Yeah, we do not know exactly the source of that. There's some media reporting. Unfortunately, we're become very reliant on what's reported in the media as to what's happening with flights coming into Florida.
Who is helping them get on these flights?
Well, right now, that's what we're trying to find out. There's indications that private aircraft charter companies are involved with the aviation facet, that private bus charter companies are involved, and that there are non-governmental organizations, social support agencies, and so forth that are involved in the process.
The News 4 Jax I-team discovered records showing 21 of Vuelo Airlines flights landing in Jacksonville in the past 3 months. That airline has been coming from places like Burbank, Houston, El Paso, Austin, and McAllen, Texas. When asked about it, the White House says it's their legal responsibility to safely care for unaccompanied children until they can be united with a parent or sponsor. I have reached out to ICE for comment to see if they could confirm that Ulloa came here on a flight, but I will let you know when I hear back from them. Ulloa's mother told Univision that he told her that he did use the wrong name when he came here. She also says that the man he is accused of killing is someone that he lived with and who he referred to as an uncle. Now, I have reached out to the victim's family as well, but they did not wish to comment at this time. Reporting live from downtown, Corley Peel, Channel 4, the local station.
A convicted sex offender is back in jail tonight, arrested by Border Patrol agents from the Detroit station for illegally re-entering the U.S.
Border Patrol arrested 51-year-old Juan Diaz Pineda near White Lake Township.
Larry Spruill now joins us with more.
Good evening, Steve and Priya. Now, agents sent him back to Honduras in June of this year after he was convicted of having sexual conduct with a person under 13 years old. Now, after getting several tips from a concerned citizen, they were able to find him back here in Michigan.
This man, 51-year-old Juan Diaz-Pineda, is in trouble and back in jail Saturday. Border Patrol agents from the Detroit station arrested him on October 28th in White Lake Township for illegally re-entering the United States. Now, agents said they first came into contact with Diaz-Pineda in April of 2020 when he was charged and convicted for criminal sexual conduct with a person under 13 years old. Following his felony conviction in 2020, he was sentenced to 207 days confinement and 5 years probation. Now, in May of this year, a judge ordered him to be sent back to Honduras, but agents said they received information and tips from a concerned citizen that he was back in the United States. Diaz-Pineda is now going through the process for a reinstatement of a prior order of removal and has been presented for prosecution to the United States Attorney's Office for violation of reentry of an aggravated felon.
Now, a spokesperson for the agency says they are extremely proud of the agency and their agents for able to solving this case in such a small window. Reporting on the Detroit Seaside tonight, Larry Spruill, Local 4.
Well, Fox 26 News has discovered a man the ACLU once tried to get out of jail is now wanted for a murder in Tulare County. So was the ACLU wrong about the man?
Or has his life completely changed in just a couple of years? Fox 26 News reporter Marie Ettinger has been investigating this today.
Marie's live with us in the studio right now. So Marie, what did you find out?
Still working on the answer to those questions. This is 24-year-old Jose Omar Bello Reyes. He's at a Kern County board meeting reading a poem he wrote about immigration and customs enforcement. That was in 2019. Today, he and 2 others are accused of shooting a man and leaving him to die in an orchard in Terabella. The Tulare County Sheriff's Office says Jose Omar Bello Reyes is connected with the murder of 58-year-old Douglas R. Klein. That was on October 15th of this year. Detectives think the people responsible for the murder are involved with drugs and have massive stores of weaponry, including a grenade launcher.
We can all speculate, like a drug deal gone bad. I mean, we can speculate like crazy, but to say exactly what happened, I don't think anybody can say that just quite yet.
Reyes first ran into trouble with law enforcement when Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested him in 2018. He bonded out with the help of community donations, and he started speaking out against ICE. But then he went to jail for a DUI, and ICE re-arrested him for violating his bail terms. That was just a couple days after Reyes presented this poem critical of ICE. The ACLU claimed the arrest was retaliation for the poem, but the ACLU lost the suit, with the judge saying ICE had an objectively reasonable justification for the arrest. Now, the Tulare County Sheriff's Office says Reyes is running with the same group that was caught with 12 guns, 28 magazines, a grenade launcher, and pounds of what detectives believe is heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. How does somebody in 2019 go from being a community activist and vocal speaker at community board meetings to 2 years later being accused of murder?
Yeah, I really don't know. The fact that he's affiliated in this group and the amount of narcotics that we did seize, I mean, that's again, it would be a speculation, but I mean, if there is narcotics that got involved, you know, that could be a possibility on changing someone's entire life like that.
I reached out to the ACLU for comment, but I haven't heard back.
All right, thanks so much, Marie. The Tulare County Sheriff's Office says Reyes is known to frequent Early Mart, Delano, McFarland, and Bakersfield.
If you have any information that could help detectives find Reyes, we've got a few numbers you can call. You can reach out to Detective Brad McLean with the Tulare County Sheriff's Office by calling 559-733-6218. Or if you prefer, you can remain anonymous by calling or texting the Sheriff's Office tip line. That number, 559-725-4194. You can also email tipnow@tcso.com.
Let's bring to the stage ACLU staff attorney Jordan Wells.
We're fortunate at the ACLU to have clients who inspire the public to demand their rights. Invariably, our clients fight not only for themselves, but also, by example and precedent, for the rights of all of us. 6 months ago, Bakersfield College student Jose Bello was breathing free air thanks to community supporters who had cobbled together $10,000 in bond money to free him from an ICE prison. Jose was free, but he was not in the clear. Having arrived in the United States as a baby, he still faced the prospect of deportation to a country he's never known. And now a father to an infant son, he could have chosen to keep a low profile while defending against his deportation. But that's not who Jose is. He believes that a community overcomes its oppressors by fighting together rather than retreating to their individual corners. And he felt it was important to speak out. On May 15th, he stood before the Kern County Board of Supervisors and delivered a poem criticizing ICE and calling on the public to unite against the current administration's vicious policy of separating immigrant families. ICE's reaction was as swift as it was chilling. Less than 36 hours later, ICE agents came to Jose's home and threw him back in prison. Except now, this time they increased his bond to $50,000, exorbitant even by ICE standards. Jailing an artist who dares to criticize the government strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. If ICE gets away with it, before long they will turn to their other critics, squelching dissent until no one is left to challenge them. With Jose as our client, we are suing to uphold the right against government retaliation for speech. And meanwhile, thanks to the Players Coalition and NFL players Demario Davis and Josh Norman, and much to the chagrin of ICE officers in Bakersfield, Jose was able to post the $50,000 bond. We are lucky to have Jose Bello with us here tonight to deliver his poem, Dear America.
Dear America, by Jose Bello. Dear America, our administration has failed. They passed laws against our people, took away our rights and our freedom, and still expect to be held? Chales. Dear America, you and your administration cause fear through separation. Instead of building trust with our people, do you prefer this racial tension? Oppressed, I live my life in frustration. Private prisons, political funding, mass incarceration, you make the connection. I speak for the victims that pay for this scam. Vietnamese, Jamaican, African, Cambodian, Mexican, Salvadorian, and on and on. Together we stand. We demand our respect. We want our dignity back. Our roots run deep in this country. Now that's a true fact. Dear Americans, you might be asking yourself, what's the whole point of repeating these facts? Well, I'm here to let you know. We want to feel safe, whether we're brown, Asian, or black. We don't want your jobs. We don't want your money. We're here to work hard, pay taxes, and study. The fight has begun. We will never be apart, Chiquito, is what I promised my son. Y'all can try to justify your actions, try to make excuses. The bottom line here is that at the end, the people always triumph and the government loses. Dear America, do not consider this a threat. Our intentions are only to continue making this country great. It's time to begin standing up for what's right. Criminalizing children, separating families, our national security, does this make it all right? No, it doesn't, and it won't. The youth have to stand up. We have to unite with our peers. Let's begin educating our children by speaking wisdom into their ears. Because at the end of the day, I am you, and you are me. Together, we are. Sincerely, those seeds you tried to bury. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Jose.
And now to your 17 Crime Watch. A man wanted in connection to a murder in Tulare County is still on the run tonight. This after officials confirmed he's the same man who was at the center of a 2019 Bakersfield immigration controversy. Sheriff's officials in Tulare say Jose Omar Bello Reyes is one of 3 men involved in the shooting death of a man whose body was found at a Terabella orchard. You might remember the 24-year-old was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2019, 36 hours after he read a poem critical of ICE before the Kern County Board of Supervisors. Bello Reyes' case gained national attention because of the timing of his arrest, but ICE maintained that Bello Reyes was arrested because of a months-old DUI. Meantime, 2 other men have been arrested in connection to the murder.
And is under arrest, accused of providing illegal medical care.
In some cases, investigators say they have evidence the man provided false diagnoses. News specialist Andrew Adams is live in Utah County with the story. Andrew?
Well, investigators say in at least one case, somebody saw some very negative health effects as a result of treatment, and they're worried there may be others out there. Detectives first learned about this home after somebody went to police with a complaint about bad complications from treatment.
When he went to a real doctor, had some amputated toes because of it, and so they were concerned.
According to a probable cause statement, state investigators set up a sting here, sending in one of their own undercover officers. The documents allege Edgar Flores Bobadilla told the officer he had multiple sclerosis and he could potentially cure him with treatments inside his home. If only he kept the work confidential. Over a month later, officers executed a search warrant and uncovered medical records and supplies.
He was using injectables, IVs, medicine that was coming from outside the United States.
The Utah Attorney General's Office Secure Strike Force says it learned the man had been charging patients, who are mostly undocumented immigrants, $6,000 in cash for services, with half due up front. And all that money was apparently piling up.
We did seize $144,000 from his house in cash.
Those close to the man told police he was a doctor in Mexico, but detectives say he was not licensed here, instead offering clandestine services to people who may have been afraid to seek conventional care because of their status.
Our office is not interested in undocumented status whatsoever, so if they come forward and talk to us, that doesn't matter at all.
State investigators say this kind of care is simply dangerous, as the man missing some toes could attest.
There's always the potential, especially when you're doing it in your home, in your basement. It's not the most sterile and clean environment necessarily, and so things can turn bad.
Again, if anyone out there feels they may have fallen victim, they're asked to reach out to the Utah Attorney General's office. And as the officer said, regardless of status, someone should be able to go seek medical care or see a licensed doctor without fear of arrest or being detained. In Utah County, Andrew Adams, KSL 5 News.
Andrew, thank you.
One person has died. Dozens more are now in Border Patrol custody after what CBP says was an illegal border crossing attempt. Multiple agencies responding late Friday night to find 36 people who had tried to swim around the border there in Imperial Beach. 13 of them had to be pulled from the water. One woman was found unresponsive. She was pronounced dead an hour later. The rest taken into Border Patrol custody. And of course, you can see the search response went on for hours there. All of the people we're told were Mexican nationals, and CBP says initial reports said there were up to 70 people that were spotted in the water. And this rescue comes just a week after a group of 25 migrants were rescued and taken into custody off the coast of Point Loma.
U.S. Border Patrol says 70 people tried to illegally cross into America by actually swimming past a fence line that's actually planted in the ocean. They entered the water in Tijuana, that's about half a mile south of where I am, and then tried to swim north to Borderfield State Park in San Diego. That's where they would have climbed on shore and entered into America. Most of them didn't make it, however. The Border Patrol agents captured 36 people, and one woman, as you mentioned, died. She had struggled in that water. Around half a dozen law enforcement agencies all worked together to gather these migrants, including the U.S. Coast Guard, who rescued 13 people struggling in that water. The U.S. Border Patrol called this attempt a, quote, ruthless smuggling tactic by organizations that charge a fee to get people illegally into America. But lately, it's important to note, illegal border crossing numbers are actually down. During September, the total number of unique encounters between internationals and Border Patrol agents was down 9%. The total number of unaccompanied children, that decreased by 24%. And for entire families trying to cross into America, that number is actually down 26%. But of course, while those numbers for the month of September have been down, the Biden administration has been struggling to really get a hold of the surging number of migrants that are entering into the U.S. ever since the pandemic began and ever since President Biden actually took office. This situation here on the Tijuana-San Diego border is going to remain under investigation.
And then President Biden is calling these reports about the administration paying up to $450,000 to illegal immigrants who are separated from family members garbage. He says it's not going to happen. But the ACLU says that it is. So who is right?
What, are you talking about the question you asked him yesterday?
Yes.
So if it saves taxpayer dollars and puts the disastrous history of the previous administration's use of zero tolerance and family separation behind us, the president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government. You know, DOJ can obviously speak more to that process. The president what he was reacting to was the dollar figure that was mentioned, that you mentioned to him yesterday. As press accounts to date indicate, there's been press accounts on this, DOJ made clear to the plaintiffs that the reported figures are higher than anywhere that a settlement can land. Again, this is something that the Department of Justice can speak to. I do not have anything more to add to this.
But if he's not okay with $450,000, how much money is he okay giving? This is
Again, Peter, this is something that the Department of Justice is going to handle. I just laid out what he was thinking and how the process was moving forward. The DOJ will talk to the specifics of this.
So what changed then from yesterday? You're saying that he would be perfectly comfortable settling with these families who broke the law to come here, but yesterday he said that's not going to happen.
First of all, let's remember how we got here, how we got to a place where we're dealing with families being separated. This is coming from the last administration, cruel, inhuman, immoral policies against just people. It's separating children from their families, 18-month-olds, 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds from their families. That's how we got here, is because of the last administration. This is what we're trying to deal with here in this administration. So let's be very clear of how we got here and what's happening. Anything else that you would like to know about this, again, I'll send you to the Department of Justice. I can't speak to any more specifics on this.
Okay. Thank you.
If Joe Biden has shown us anything in his long career, it's that he's allergic to the truth. His days as a liar start way back in law school, where he was found guilty of plagiarism when a law school faculty report dated December 1st, 1965, concluded that Mr. Biden had used 5 pages from a published law review article without quotation or attribution. And this incident was not the last time Biden ripped someone off. Just ask British politician Neil Kinnock, whose speech Joe Biden took almost word for word in 1988. But when all you know how to do is lie, you are not going to let a little truth get in your way, as Biden has made evident in his current role. Remember when he said this last December about vaccines?
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
10 months later, we got this.
The Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated.
And that brings us to yesterday, where Peter Doocy pressed Biden on the report his administration was going to pay illegal migrant families separated at the border $450,000 per person.
It's not true.
So this is a garbage report.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
But the ACLU called Biden out, saying these payments will happen. So Peter Doocy pressed the White House again today.
So who is right?
The president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government.
So it looks like Biden was caught in yet another lie. But at the end of the day, it sounds like illegal migrants are about to get a windfall of cash, whether Biden admits it or not. Here now is former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott Welcome, Chief. Listen, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of, kids from foster care who get separated, who are in foster care, were separated from their parents because their parents broke the law. And they're also traumatized. How is the trauma from a child who was separated because their parent broke the law crossing our border any more traumatic? Why do they get this windfall? What is going on here?
Yeah, this is ludicrous. Anybody can file a lawsuit, but there's no reason the federal government should be settling this lawsuit. And it's exactly what you said. There was no separation policy. It was a prosecution policy. People broke the law. They were prosecuted. And they don't get to take their kids to jail with them.
Right.
What's going to happen next? People with DUIs, they get paid as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen these images, by the way, Rodney, of, people throwing the cartels throwing little kids over the walls. We've seen kids abandoned in the desert. It's been horrific to see. Others are caught in sex trafficking. I'm just worried that this is going to incentivize parents in other countries to do something very irresponsible, which is to bring their children on this journey. And then if they get caught and separated, then they get this money. It's like crime pays.
Yeah, I'm really worried about we talk about push and pull factors. I'm worried about the pull factors. The whole message will never go out. It'll just be that illegal aliens got paid $450,000 apiece after they got to the U.S. And that we just can't handle this mass migration. It's a national security issue. We're talking about kids here. We're talking about money. But there are real threats coming into this country between the borders because the agents are simply overwhelmed.
You talk to the Border Patrol all the time. You know the guys and women on the ground. And by the way, I think they're the greatest humanitarian force in the Western Hemisphere. They save people every single day who are out in the desert or crossing or drowning in those rivers. What do they feel about this payout? What does it tell them? What does it communicate to them about the value of the work they do?
It's very demoralizing. It's very frustrating. They understand what it takes to identify trafficking of human beings. For example, we just had an illegal alien in Florida that was arrested for murder. He snuck into the country by falsely claiming he was an underage kid. The agents, when you're getting 600 kids a day crossing the border, they just don't have the time to dig in and figure it out. And that's very frustrating because they want to preserve life. They want to preserve the safety of the border. And they're there to serve. And when they feel like their hands are tied and they're just stuck processing people that are going to get released, it's very demoralizing.
Yeah, well, we pray for those Border Patrol and all the good work they do. And we thank you for joining us today. Rodney Scott, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
New at 11, we checked. Traffic is flowing smoothly again off the Eisenhower into Ida B. Wells Drive. That's after activists shut down the street calling for a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants.
And if we don't get it, shut it down! And if we don't get it, shut it down!
You can see the group sitting in the eastbound lanes, creating a really big backup for people getting off the Eisenhower. You see that traffic there. The group was protesting outside the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office, or ICE. They want Congress to fight for immigration reform and create a way for people to become citizens.
We're tired. We want the promises that we've been told by people in Congress and people in D.C. to get citizenship for our people. And, DACA, it's not enough. Work permits is not what we came for. We came for citizenship, and we're not leaving until we get an answer.
So the protest was peaceful, but you see here, police eventually started putting out tickets for cars that were parked in the middle of the street. They also gave tickets to people who were blocking traffic there.
Rights Advocates was held in Redwood City, claiming families are being torn apart by policies in San Mateo County. These protesters gathered before last night's special meeting of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors and demanded that the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office stop transferring immigrants over to federal ICE agents. One man who's lived in the Bay Area since he was 8 years old says he was held in custody for months in Southern California, waiting for a bond hearing.
It's in the middle of the desert, 23 hours lockdown. You go from one cage to another to get a little bit of sunlight. The phone, you had to use the phone through your foot slot in your cell.
Now, the group wants San Mateo County to join other Bay Area counties in creating a policy to stop cooperating with ICE unless ICE agents show a warrant signed by a judge.
Helping Nevada's dreamers and any undocumented students pay for college. UNLV announcing it's teaming up with the Dream.US program, all giving scholarships for any student who might not have qualified for federal aid. The Dream.US is the country's largest college access and success program for immigrant youth. Nevada State College was the first in the state to offer these scholarships. They started with 13 scholars and now have 115 students. The scholarship covers up to $33,000 in fees towards a bachelor's. Applications open November 1st. The deadline is February 28th. Applicants must be first-time college students. Community college grads are students that have no more than 21 credits at a four-year college. 10 applications are going to be approved. It is open for those under the DACA program, temporary protected status, or undocumented students. The resource coordinator for UNLV's undocumented student program says she benefited herself from the program, and it pushed her to give back to others.
I think that if I hadn't been a recipient of it, I would have definitely struggled to pay for college or even have that stress of paying for college on top of other stresses that we have as young adults. So it was nice to not have to worry about that aspect. From personal experience and seeing amongst my peers, they're all very thankful and determined to give back to the communities because they're that thankful that they want to give back in any way that they can.
In addition to this new scholarship, UNLV has a range of support programs, all for immigrant students. You can find out the latest on our website right now at fox5vegas.com.
So are we or are we not paying upwards of $450,000 to each family separated at the border? Peter Doocy tried to find out from the President of the United States yesterday, said that there was nothing to this, essentially. Did he get any clarification at the White House today? Peter, did you?
We did, Neil. And to answer your question, are we or are we not paying these illegal immigrants who were separated from family members under the last administration? Are we giving them cash? Not yet, is what I just heard.
The administration paying up to $450,000 to illegal immigrants who are separated from family members. Garbage. He says it's not going to happen. But the ACLU says that it is. So who is right?
If it saves taxpayer dollars and puts the disastrous history of the previous administration's use of zero tolerance and family separation behind us, the president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government.
So today, the president is perfectly comfortable writing checks to these illegal immigrants who are separated from family members under the last administration. That is completely different than what he told me about this time yesterday.
There were reports that were surfacing that your administration is planning to pay illegal immigrants who are separated from their families at the border up to $450,000 each, possibly $1 million per family. Do you think that that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report?
Yeah.
Apparently it's not a garbage report. The only issue with it is the number. The $450,000 number is apparently a little high. That's what Karine Jean-Pierre told us. The DOJ has communicated to the plaintiffs, to the attorneys representing these illegal immigrants. Neil.
All right. Thank you very much, Peter Doocy, on that reaction right now from Congressman Michael McCall of Texas. He sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, what do you think?
Well, yeah, the president calls it garbage. ACLU says it's true. And then they backtrack on their story saying, well, you know, we're negotiating. My sources at the Department of Justice tell me that they are negotiating with the ACLU and the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. And I think, you know, after what happened last Tuesday, a resounding message against the Biden administration's policies, particularly when it comes to this wide open border situation we have. And if we, you know, to the deterrent factor, you know, I'm from Texas, and the idea that we're going to tell illegals, hey, come on in, illegally break our laws, and by the way, we could give you up to $1 million per family. What kind of message of deterrence does that really have? And I think that's why they're crawfishing, and they're not really explaining the story and they probably want it to go away. But this is just one of many, Neil, that I think is a disaster for this administration.
Well, Congress, I'm wondering, too, regardless of whether it's 450,000 or 350,000 or 250,000, obviously there's a plan up for payment for families separated. I wonder if it would extend to the same thing that happened in this administration and the precedent it sets.
It's a terrible precedent. And in fact, Neil, we know that there are negotiations going on right now with Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats on the reconciliation bill to actually provide appropriations to pay these settlements that the Justice Department, I think, is trying to negotiate right now, with these plaintiffs. So regardless of what you thought about separation of family, I think it's a principle of you can't break our laws and then win the lottery. And the message of deterrence is pretty much gone. It already has been gone for a long time when he rescinded Remain in Mexico. But then to telegraph, to people in Central and Latin America that you can come in and get $450,000 illegally, $1 million. And this is what really angers the American people. This is why you saw the result you saw last Tuesday. They're tired of these kind of stories. They're tired of what happened in Afghanistan. Now we have a state-sponsored terror state and a wide-open border, which in my judgment as former chairman of Homeland is a really prescription for danger.
You mentioned that they're trying to put this in. I assume you were talking about the social spending and climate package that Democrats are moving quickly to get together and mark up and vote on, I guess. But that this feature is going to be tucked into that to pay those who've been separated at the border. Do you know that for sure?
I know those discussions are underway. They don't have the votes. The Democrats, particularly after Tuesday, are in complete disarray. I just got off the floor. Pelosi's trying to count the votes. I don't think she has them right now. But it's things like this that when people hear this, that they're going to give illegals who broke the law money. But also, there's also talks about a massive amnesty program. I don't know if that's going to be in the final bill we vote on or not, but we do know that's being considered, that 10 million people could be granted amnesty in this country. That's the kind of policy I think that's really backfiring on the Democrats and is going to give us a majority in 2022.
John Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. Tonight we're going to focus on the deteriorating situation at the southern border. A few months ago, we were having a debate over whether to use the term crisis when describing what's happening along the southern border with unprecedented numbers of people crossing illegally into this country. But there's another word that has replaced crisis: disaster. And unless you're one of the few people who thinks that open borders are a great idea, and most Americans don't, disaster maybe more accurately illustrates what's going on. How else can you describe 1.7 million people encountered trying to cross the border in the last 12 months? That's equivalent to every person living in the city of Phoenix trying to cross the border. And how many got away? We have no idea. Yuma, Arizona has seen a huge surge in migrants. The Yuma sector encompasses 126 miles of border with Mexico, from the imperial sand dunes of California to the Yuma-Pima County line. And joining us now on Newsmaker Saturday is Yuma County Sheriff Leon Wilmot in his third term now as sheriff. Sheriff, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Hi, you're more than welcome.
All right, just give me a thumbnail. What in the world is going on? Because in August of 2020, the Yuma sector, and I know you're not border enforcement, but you've been sucked into this unwittingly. In August of 2020, the Yuma sector encountered 700 migrants. This year, August of 2021, agents encountered over 17,000 migrants. How is this affecting you? What's going on in Yuma?
Well, the impacts for us have been exponential as far as trying to fill the gap with our Border Patrol partners, because now they've been taken off of the line. They're no longer down there along the international boundary, but they're actually spending more time processing all these individuals that have been apprehended along the border. So for a 60-mile radius along the international boundary, you might see 4 Border Patrol agents where you used to see 1 Border Patrol agent just about every mile.
That's not happening. Is this, Sheriff, in your view, from a law enforcement perspective, is this by design? Are the smugglers more interested in moving contraband across the border, and this is a great diversion, or are they making money both ways, human trafficking and drugs?
What's important for everybody to understand is the cartels are the ones that control every mile of the international boundary. So they're making money on both ends. They have the human immigration aspect, which intentionally, by design, they have come across on certain areas of the border. So for Yuma County, for instance, all of this activity is happening along our river corridor with Baja California. Then we have the Sinaloa cartel, which actually works out of Sonora, which is a southern desert area. So while they're tying up resources along the river corridor, we have the narcotics and other smuggling going on along the eastern deserts. So far this year, because of the smuggling out in the desert, we've encountered 25 deaths out in the desert. Actually, we had one more the other day. And we have the large amounts of narcotics that are being smuggled across, which is going throughout the United States. So your overdoses in your communities, your overdose deaths, as well as the other criminal activity that's going on out east is also impacting us because Border Patrol is stuck at their station processing. So this is a prime example of the administration delivering a false narrative of border security, because now they've interjected personal and political ideologies into enforcement, which is impacting our law enforcement personnel. And now with the recent memo that came out from Mayorkas, he's further diluted our federal partners' ability to enforce the rule of law by restricting them on what they can do and where.
Okay, Sheriff, you must know San Luis Police Chief Richard Jessup, right?
Yeah.
My understanding is he is reporting, this is a border town next to Yuma, he's reporting that officers this year have encountered migrants from 40 different countries. 40. This used to be a Mexico, maybe Central America thing. We've got people now from all over the world coming here.
Yuma sector's actually encountered individuals from over 120 different countries, some of which are actually special interest countries, which have ties to terrorism. And that's our concern from a public safety standpoint when I was talking to you earlier. Those are the individuals that we're concerned with out in the eastern desert, because if you have individuals with terrorist ties, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, those are just some of them that have been encountered just in Yuma County. Now, you mentioned earlier the getaways. We know that there's been over 200,000 getaways in Arizona.
These are people who come here and escape detection. The old formula, Sheriff, when I used to go down to the border, and I went there quite a bit 10 years ago, the formula was, and they never like to talk about it, but it was for every one captured, the thought was 3 get away.
Correct.
Is that still the formula, or is it bigger now?
I think you're looking at a formula that's probably bigger, because you look at the 1.9 million encounters that they've had along the southern border. For Arizona, I want to say it's been 114,000 just in Yuma sector alone this last fiscal year for them. And we had over 7,000 getaways just in Yuma County.
Okay, so when we start talking about this, and then there's discussion of, who are these people? Is there some nexus to terrorism or terrorists who want to come into the country? I mean, obviously the people who flew the planes in 9/11, they got here on student visas. They didn't have to, game the system and cross the border. They did it the old-fashioned way. They overstayed their visas or were on student visas. You really believe that some of these people crossing the border right now may want to do us harm? This is not hyperbole. You really believe this?
I believe that the individuals that wish to do our country harm are going to take the least way of getting into here. And right now, that's across the southern border.
All right, there is video.
There's no Border Patrol presence.
I want to ask you about this video that I've seen. Smugglers coming across, They fly into Mexicali. They fly the people into Mexicali. From there, they take a bus to a Mexican town right across from Yuma. And after they get dropped off from the bus, then they just cross the Colorado River. This isn't like they're snaking through the desert. You know, they're taking a bus right to the edge and then walking across at a gap known as the Gap. You know that area, the Gap. There's where there's no border wall. And they're just walking across and offering themselves up, I guess with full knowledge that once they're here, they're good to go.
That's a daily occurrence. We've got, right now they're averaging 650 apprehensions each and every day in Yuma County. I think on September 30th, they had 5,000 individuals in their building over there at Border Patrol that had been apprehended. And they've had up to 1,000 a day as far as apprehensions go, just in Yuma.
Have you been in that building? Can you describe what the conditions are like there? Because I know a lot of the media has been shut out of these holding facilities. Can you describe what you're seeing in those holding facilities?
It's basically a large tent, and when the individuals are brought in for processing, they do a medical screening on individuals to ensure that they don't have any abnormal medical conditions.
That would include COVID?
Well, and that was part of the problem in the very beginning is they weren't even testing for COVID, and that's not being done at the Border Patrol station. That's just a processing location. Once they're done processed out of that tent, which they have like 24 hours roughly, then ICE takes custody of them and takes them either to a motel or they get bused to a motel in Phoenix or Tucson or California, in some cases Texas. And then that company that they've contracted with is responsible for doing any kind of COVID testing. And they're not being given the vaccine before they're released into the communities. They're just being allowed to get on a bus, train, airplane to get into the interior of the United States.
Sheriff,
So
who decides where these people go?
It's my understanding that ICE is in charge of where they end up going.
Is there any rhyme nor reason of where they go? Now, this gets into some cynical political stuff, but is there a push to put these people into quote unquote red states?
I don't have any information on that. I can tell you that for the most part, what I'm being told is if they're Cubans, they come in through Yuma sector and then they fly over to Florida. So, because that's where they want to go.
That would make sense. I mean, they probably have family there. Now, Catholic Services, they get involved in some of this as well, moving people around and taking them in, right?
Right. We have a large number of non-governmental organizations that also help. And that was part of the problem early on is the fact that with the pandemic, the NGOs were having a hard time trying to find any volunteers to help with this like we did in 2019. So we didn't have a place for anybody to go. Border Patrol was stuck with just releasing these folks out into our community with no resources. And that was the impact locally here that we dealt with. And what everybody needs to remember is that of this 1.9 million that's been allowed in, each and every one of those individuals is either paying anywhere from $6,000 a piece up to $15,000 a piece, depending on what country they're coming from. So this is a moneymaker for the cartels, and this administration has turned ICE and Border Patrol basically into the transportation hub for the cartels to get individuals into the United States.
Wow. Sheriff, can you describe what's happened in Yuma County in terms of crime rates? Are you seeing a spike? Are you seeing problems stemming from this kind of unprecedented movement through our border?
Well, we've seen some impacts in regards to juveniles that were being smuggled across because they had been violated by the criminal element before they reached the United States. So they've been taken to our family advocacy centers. You've also seen the narcotics that are coming in through the eastern part. And when the U.S. attorney doesn't want to charge these individuals, then we end up cross-deputizing Border Patrol agents so they can actually charge these individuals they catch smuggling hard narcotics and charging them through the state, which they end up in our jail. And we never get reimbursed by the federal government but 5 cents on the dollar for for inmates that are in our jail that have committed crimes that have entered the country illegally.
Sheriff, this is a political question, but I've got to ask it. What would be the rationale for essentially flinging the border wide open? What would be the upside? Why would anybody want to do this?
I have no answer for that, other than you want to tear apart the country from the inside out. I don't know. You can never sacrifice public safety, homeland security, or border security when you're put in a lead law enforcement role. And that's something that all of us sheriffs have said, and we've told that to Mayorkas. And fact is, the last time I talked to him, I told him, I said, right now, because of your memos and your lack of supporting the men and women who are our federal law enforcement out there doing the job, you basically demean them, you've restricted them from being able to do their job, and their morale's at an all-time low. That's not the signs of a good leader, especially in his position.
One of the most notable people ever to come out of Yuma was Cesar Chavez, who founded the United Farm Workers Union. A little bit of history. People may not know this. Cesar Chavez was firmly against illegal immigration because it undercut the Farm Workers Union with cheap labor. He didn't like it. He didn't like the Bracero program, where workers were coming across, because it undercut his efforts to unionize. And in the mid-1970s, he even conducted an illegals campaign. That's what it was called, to identify and report illegal immigration. This seems to have been lost in the discussion, that even Cesar Chavez didn't like this stuff.
No, he didn't. And right now, Yuma County obviously is a large agricultural community, and 90% of America's winter vegetables come from Yuma.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we explained to Mayorkas is you need to secure the border, because this activity is going through farmland, and you're going to impact our farmers and their ability to go out into their fields and process that growth, because now these illegals have actually contaminated that farm area, and you can't utilize that. So right now, between October and December, it is a big part of the agriculture, and we have a lot of individuals coming from our sister city in San Luis, Mexico, coming across every day to work. And they don't want this in their communities any more than we do here.
That's interesting. Sheriff, I appreciate it. Sheriff Leon Wilmot, Yuma County Sheriff for many years. Appreciate you, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, President Biden confused again. Shocking. And the White House is trying to clean up his mess. A report this week claims the administration is planning to pay migrants separated at the border under President Trump up to $450,000 apiece for individuals. Families could get $1 million. That's fantastic. Yesterday, Sleepy Joe said, "That's a load of garbage, my Reverend."
There were reports that were surfacing that your administration is planning to pay illegal immigrants who are separated from their families at the border up to $450,000 each, possibly $1 million per family. Do you think that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report.
Yeah.
The ACLU and the Justice Department disagree. ACLU said in the statement, quote, "President Biden may not have been fully briefed about the actions of his very own Justice Department, but if he follows through on what he said, the president is abandoning a core campaign promise to do justice for the thousands of separated families." End quote. Today, Fox's Peter Ducey tried to get some answers.
He says it's not going to happen, but the ACLU says that it is. So who is right?
If it saves taxpayer dollars and puts the disastrous history of the previous administration's use of zero tolerance and family separation behind us, the president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government.
Saves money. You're going to save so much money giving every family $1 million. So it looks like the plan is on, kind of. Does the president know that? let's meet tonight's I love a good man panel. We've got comedian and host of Fox Across America on Fox News Radio. It is one and only Jim Fala. We call him Jimmy. Former Biden campaign surrogate and Democrat strategist. There he is, as handsome as ever, Kevin Walling. Talk about balling with Walling. And Foundation for Economic Education Policy correspondent. He moonlights as one of my sexy gay boyfriends. It is Brad Palumbo. Gentlemen, I'm overwhelmed with hostility from my own loins.
Hey, I want that title.
Yeah, well, you got to work for it, baby. Sorry, Jim, to make you jealous. But I will start with you, Jimmy. This is a lot of money, and even the president called it garbage. So where do we stand here? Are they making policy without his knowledge?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Whether he has knowledge or not, it doesn't sound like he does. But even if he did, he doesn't have any say in this. He's never been able to stand up to the far left wing of his party. If they say we're doing this, K-Train, and you know that. Biden as a president is your elderly relative with dietary restrictions. He goes to the table, he orders what he wants, and then before the waiter leaves, a younger relative grabs the waiter and says, no, he can't have the lasagna, bring him the steak instead. This has been the whole Biden presidency. Yep. He's like, I'll have the moderation. And then AOC's like, no, Grandpa can't have the moderation. Bring him the bacon-wrapped socialism. One other point, and I have to make this point, because I'm so sick of hearing about family separation. As a family man, if I walked 1,000 miles with my family, we would be thrilled to have somebody to separate us. They should be paying these people. I know Jenny would.
Yeah, I just talked to her. She said she absolutely would.
Poor Lincoln.
She's wondering if in fact you could make some appeal to the Biden administration and claim that you've been wronged by the past president. So, Kevin, there are many ways to fix immigration policy in this country. This is not one of them. And I think actually it incentivizes more people to come here and sue the government for a number of grievances.
Yeah, Kennedy, the optics of this aren't great. Speaking as a Democrat, I think this is something that was obviously handled at the Department of Justice on the staff level. This is a law in the books since 1948. I look back at the history of this law that empowers the Attorney General to make these kind of settlements with migrants coming across this country that are wronged in some capacity. Now, 5,500 or so kids were separated from their mothers and fathers as they came across that border, entered into this country, and that's obviously what this is about, not about just random people coming across the border with settlement. So we did harm to these families to some degree. Now, be it that it's an illegal action, of course, but we need to figure out some level of support. Number one, Kennedy, we got to reunite these. We got to reunite these families to begin with.
But here's the thing: like, you like to see these people as dumb peasants and victims and dirty. I see them as rational and smart. So if you're rational and smart, you weigh the risks, and you know that if you get to the country, that the adults, especially the adult men, they're going to be thrown in jail, and then that means they're going to be separated from their children. You know that when you're moving northward.
No, there's family detention. I mean, the zero tolerance policy removed those kids from their families' arms. There's family detention centers, and that's been the case before zero tolerance.
But this entire Biden setup,
that were separated from their
I know it's been, but what about the tens of thousands who have made the trek alone? Because there was family separation in places like Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala.
Yeah.
Should they sue the U.S. government because they made the choice of separating all the way back? What?
And one other quick point. Hold on, I just want to say this.
I want to bring. I
don't want anyone suing the U.S. government. These folks are coming to the country illegally, but
you know what? Brad
we got to
Palumbo is my
reunite these
gay
families to
boyfriend,
begin
and my
with.
gay boyfriend deserves his say. Brad, go.
Well, look, the thing I'm most concerned about by all of this is that President Biden doesn't know what's going on in his own administration. The DOJ and the ACLU are working out these plans, and he's asked about it, and he has no idea. But look, I have a lot of sympathy for kids that were separated from their parents. The border situation was a mess under the last administration, under this administration. It absolutely is a heartbreaking situation, but it would create a bad incentive to start handing out big cash settlements to people that come here illegally. I mean, what is that going to cause? And also, what does it say when we're giving bigger settlements to people affected by those policies than we do to Gold Star families? I mean, this is a terrible idea, and the Biden administration needs to get it straight.
Yeah, and stop paying people. You know what? Throwing cash at problems makes you seem like...
But it's our money.
It is our money. It makes you seem like a bad pimp. And you know what? Although I celebrate consensual prostitution, we don't need bad pimps in this world.